Hello everyone and welcome to Fever FM. We're here again for our Together We Can project, which is brought to you by the National Lottery Community Fund. Today we will be discussing the concerns and anxieties around the Covid-19 vaccine take-up in the BME communities, particularly among the South Asian. We have with us today Arfan, who is an Operations Director for an organisation called Touchstone. Arfan has already had his first Covid-19 vaccine and is here to discuss any concerns you may have. Welcome Arfan. Firstly, can you tell us what feedback you are getting as an organisation and employer about the anxieties around COVID and the vaccination?
We're getting mixed feedback. There is anxiety among some of our service users and staff, in particular Black, minority, ethnic staff and South Asian staff and communities, where there seems to be a particular reluctance, which is not being helped by some of the misinformation that people are receiving through social media, WhatsApp and so on. And that's beginning to cause further questions and so on, which leads to further anxieties for people. And some of the misinformation is such, it does scare people to the point of saying if you take COVID, it might do this, it might have this impact, or it might be against someone's religion or faith, which is definitely not the case. So there's a lot of anxieties, but I think the anxieties are being created by a lot of the misinformation. So the focus is tackling some of this misinformation and to be clear to people that the vaccination is there to help, like all medicines.
Is there any advice that you can provide that can alleviate these concerns among the South Asian communities?
In terms of information, we're an age where we're saturated with information from social media. There's so many different sort of news networks. It's first to work out the source of the information you're getting and actually focus on some of the authentic sources of news. So, for example, in this country, we do have the BBC. Now, the BBC, apart from being a media outlet, is also a public corporation, and there's all sorts of information. Now, they've got videos in Punjabi, Urdu, Gujarati and so on explaining some of the Q&As around vaccination. The NHS has a huge amount of information available on its website, and some of this information can be available in translations. But if you want to get some immediate advice and concerns about your vaccination, please speak to your GP. They're there to help you. So that's what I would say if you want to find out a bit more. And please don't rely on some of the messages you may receive on WhatsApp, for example, because you don't know what the source is. And usually some of this stuff is opinions rather than facts.
Or made up. Alongside the potential physical health concerns around people taking or not taking the vaccine, are there any mental health implications for the South Asian community?
Of course, I think that's the case for all communities. We're in a pandemic. Yeah. People are dying. People are ill. And then fears about the vaccination. So naturally, people will be anxious. And it could lead to things like panic attacks, onset of depression, and possibly other mental health conditions. So it's natural. Human beings can't take too much information, but at the moment there's an overload of information. And a lot of the information out there is around fear and uncertainty. So it's actually recognizing, of course, it does have an impact. And when you then add that to the physical health element of COVID, it further compounds the impact on those communities who are more likely to get COVID seriously, less likely to take the vaccination. And on top of that, we'll be experiencing mental health conditions such as anxiety and depression related to all this.
Yeah, of course. Do you believe people's faiths may be a factor in the reluctance to take the vaccine?
Absolutely. There's a lot of information by scientists, the government and the NHS saying, please take the vaccine, it's safe. Of course, there are always side effects, but if you weigh it up, the risks, the harm of COVID is far more than any vaccine is.
It is, yeah.
And what I would suggest is going forward is people to not only look at the scientific arguments and whatever the government says, the solutions may lay in your own faith. And what I mean by that is that all the faiths, especially all the faiths from the Indian subcontinent, they all have one thing in common, is the sanctity of life. And all these faiths have absolutely talk about the welfare, the care, protection of human life. So there's a clear obligation. And the reason why I say this, because some of the misinformation is saying it's against someone's religion. Well, it isn't. If something is there to safeguard one's life and the lives of others, then your religion is a critical thing in this. And that's why many mosques, dwaras, mandirs and so on, their leaders are actually campaigning to ensure that communities get the vaccination, because they're saying it's almost a religious obligation to protect yourself and others. others. If people think, well, I'm not going to take it on the basis it's only me and therefore that's it, that's not the case.
No,
if you
it's
don't
not.
take it, you risk others, and our religions are based about protecting others, essentially. So if anyone feels there's a faith reason why you shouldn't take a vaccination, there isn't. There really isn't. All the faiths might clear in terms of sanctity of life.
Very sensible. And finally, where can people find more information, advice and support around vaccinations and possible anxieties related to this?
I've already mentioned the likes of the BBC
Yeah.
and the NHS and the GP. In terms of the support, some of your listeners may be receiving care support or a mental health support work or any other forms of sort of social care or health support, is listen to the professional who's taking care of you, because they will also have information. So there's a conduit into those that work in the health and social care, because we're all being very aware in our sector so that we can inform members, the public and our service users. But also, going back to the faith bit, go to your Gurdwara, speak to people there if need be, make phone calls, and
Yeah.
I'm sure they've made arrangements like Zoom where they keep in contact with their congregation. So please also seek advice and support. And if you've got any mental health challenges, there is support. There's the NHS crisis number. There's Touchstone. I can share you our website. There's various organisations out there. But also look after yourself. Eat well. Try to exercise, walk. All these things will keep you resilient during a time which is really, really challenging. So the other advice I'd say is keep yourself physically well. By keeping yourself physically well, it improves the chances of you being mentally well as well. So that's the message I would give to your listeners.
Thanks again for coming in. Hopefully, for anyone with any concerns regarding the vaccines, their minds should now be at ease. We would be very interested to hear your feedback, so please leave any you may have on our Fever forum. Thank you for listening and stay safe.